So, a lot of people wonder, what is risk management? It's about managing risk. It's about assessing what those threats are to security and looking at the long-term effects that are possible from root causes. So, the root causes being insecurity, being instability, conflict, being social unrest, being any of these can lead directly to, very obviously, a conflict more proportionate to the untreated time that the issue was left unaddressed. So, in order to manage risk and to mitigate the final outcomes, we're going to have to look at reducing the unrest and the dissatisfaction of people in various systems such as economic, security, and environment, and human rights around the world, so that corporations and institutions can better manage their risk. And I'm going to go through this slideshow and talk about what it entails in these different areas and various sectors, and then go deeper into exactly how or what institutions that the underrepresented or marginalized groups can get in touch with to ultimately improve their agency and access to services, and therefore reduce civil unrest and reduce the dissatisfaction and risk. So the importance of risk management is to assess the economic, political, environmental threats to the situation, and to mitigate them and to control and, in essence, manage them. And it's important because various conditions in a multidimensional world work together to create a holistic environment in which they function. And we need to not only think holistically and interdimensionally and multidisciplinarily, but also outside the box, and see what other influences can come up in ultimately impacting our companies and our institutions. Our organizations and structures, whether they be social, physical, or conceptual, like religious structures or legal systems, they have resilience when risk is properly controlled and addressed. So this requires insight and foresight of the analyst to look at and to always seek different sources of potential unrest and potential conflict. And so it's a very loose template and a good rule of thumb to look at environment, security, economy, as those are the three pillars of sustainable development, and also in the goals for the UN, and also in various other organizations, such as businesses that have the triple bottom line of people, prosperity, and the planet. And so for environment, we're looking at what environmental risks there are as a result of inequity and an inability for a institution to access services. Now, it's very important to note that an imbalance of power creates a condition for resent. So we're looking at the globe holistically. Anytime that there's an imbalance, it's going to cause a effect as a principle of cause and effect. And a root cause analysis allows us to pinpoint the point of contention that causes the conflict to begin with. And in security, for example, there's a conflict going on, and a group is repressed. And over time, this group of people becomes have dissent and they revolt. And this causes a security situation that has impacts elsewhere in the world. Same with environment. So there is a system. We have a limited number of an amount of oxygen in the system. None goes in, none comes out, and the management of carbon is conducted by, for example, carbon sinks and carbon reduction schemes, like green infrastructure and scientific advancements, and also technology to reduce the carbon produced during the production phase of material possessions. So all of these practices are coming into play in this arena that we call the world. And the similar concept is echoed for security. There is one world, and we are living in a place where there's dynamics that are interconnected, and equally similar for our economy. So when there is a nation that always and characteristically loses as a result of the systematic structure of a trade agreement, then it's going to create an imbalance and an opportunity for conflict and poverty and unrest in certain countries. Inequitable conditions ultimately create a formula for conflict and instability, which ultimately impacts our organizations. So that's why it's important. And going back to economy and the environment and security, for environment, there are carbon reduction schemes that allow a country to, for example, engage in carbon trading. And so these policies, when also they're inequitable, they also create conditions of unrest and a phenomenon known as environmental racism, whereby one group is exposed unequivocally and inequitably to environmental pollutants just based on their location in the world. And this is a result, again, of the systematic structure of the policies. So this is echoed, as you can tell, in different sectors and areas. And how we can alleviate this is for organizations and countries and people to have access to services and to participate in the process of creating these policies so that they are, in essence, at their core nature, equitable. And how we do this, for example, in discrimination and racism and marginalization in neighborhoods, is to involve the underrepresented or the marginalized groups in the public planning processes. And this creates equitable conditions on the ground at a local level for citizens to be involved and in creating the urban fabric. And so for environment, for example, it would be involvement at the international level for countries to take part in fair trading schemes as to avoid unilateral decision making, and to involve themselves as such in economic agreements and also security agreements to avoid unilateral decision making and to ensure better equity for themselves. And so improved equity, in essence, it reduces risk. It manages it for you because you are, in essence, reducing the liabilities that comes with one group being oppressed by the other. And as mentioned, this could be done at various levels, so international, local, regional, and national. And for education and media, what we're seeing for critical pedagogy is that without a feedback loop and a In critical pedagogy, the principle is that there is a relationship that's symbiotic, so that the teacher and the students learn from each other and they create the experience of learning together. And so, whereas in institutions where the curriculum is very rigid and lacks transparency, there is more of a one-way communication. And to achieve the participation and decentralization in all of these areas, we can take a few steps. First of all, to take an inventory of the dynamics that exist, and also for your specific sector, what group is being oppressed and how and what mechanisms they can use to overcome it. Secondly, we analyze the mechanisms for participation. So we need to assess how these various groups and bodies can better be integrated into the systems so that they have participation in the planning and therefore better representation, ultimately creating more equitable conditions and long-lasting security. And for linking opportunities, so linking the marginalized groups to the associated bodies, we obviously need to identify what those associated bodies are, and again, at various levels, looking at local and national, government and non-government, as well as organizations and businesses. So I hope that you enjoyed this seminar, and the session taught you a little about why it's so important to manage risk through decentralizing and enabling participation for different entities. And I hope that you look at more of my content and expand your knowledge further. And thank you very much for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.